The time is 3:15, and we're now back on the record.
Okay. Mr. Cavanaugh, so we just talked about the term useless and where it came from. It seems like you and your attorney are both saying that those conversations were privileged. Is that your current position?
Yes.
Okay, and you're going to refuse to answer based on that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who the attorneys were that were involved?
I know some of them, not all of them.
Okay. Which ones do you know?
Justin Eminetti and James Burnham.
So, what's your understanding of what the word useless means in this context?
No longer required to continue operating in the context of a federal agency.
Okay. So, do you know how agencies are generally created in our government system?
They're created by statute.
Okay.
Yes.
Statute meaning through Congress?
Yes.
Okay. And is it your understanding that based on what the executive branch deems to be useless, an agency can be pared back or destroyed in entirety?
Objection.
That's not my understanding.
Okay.
Agencies need to be, if they're fully eliminated, it needs to be through Congress.
Okay.
But the executive order language explicitly said statutory minimum functions.
Okay, great. So, changing gears a little bit, you noted that you communicated with Mr. Davis via Signal. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you communicate with anyone else at DOGE via Signal?
Yes.
Who?
In the course of NEH or generally?
Generally?
It'd be a pretty long list. Justin Fox, Ethan Choutran, occasionally James Burnham, Steve Davis, Barashakis. Beyond that, I think that's the core scope.
Okay. And how did you decide to use Signal with all of these people at DOGE?
That was the preferred communication platform when I joined, and that was just, when I joined, that was where I was told a lot of conversations were occurring.
Okay. Did you have an understanding of the reason that Signal in specific was used?
I didn't.
Do you think it was because of its auto-delete function?
Probably, yes, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. And so, what do you think that would have, what kind of benefit would that have conferred on DOGE?
Objection.
What benefit would that have conferred on for DOGE? I'm not sure.
Okay. But you were doing government work, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were using an auto-delete platform to do government work?
That was not the only platform we used to do government work.
But it was one of them?
It was one of them.
Okay. Did you see that there was an issue using an auto-delete service to do government work on?
No, I didn't really think much of it because it was already used when I joined.
Did anyone discuss that being an issue potentially?
Not to me explicitly, no.
Okay. Implicitly?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. What other services did you use besides Signal?
I think we covered this already. Google
Yeah.
Workspace, which includes all of Google's enterprise products. Drive, Gmail, Calendar, etc. Docs.
Yeah. And you said that no one ever voiced a concern to you explicitly. Did someone explicitly voice a concern to someone else
About what?
about using an auto-delete service for government work?
Did somebody ever tell somebody else that this could be? I wouldn't have been privy to the conversation. I don't know.
When you kind of said explicitly, what did you mean by explicitly?
Nobody told me that would have been an issue to use Signal.
Okay. And you weren't privy to any other conversations within the agency about that being a concern?
No.
And you noted that you talked to Mr. Fox about this lawsuit at some point. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. When did you talk to Mr. Fox about the lawsuit?
I don't recall the exact date, actually. It would have been a few weeks ago. And the context was basically that we're both having a deposition, and that was the extent of the conversation.
Okay. How did you talk to him?
We were actually in person together working in New York. We work in the same office for the same company, so it was in person, actually.
Okay, I think I'll come back to this in a minute, but I wanted to take a step back. So we talked about this way at the beginning, but you worked for FlowFi, is that how you pronounce it?
Flow Finance.
Flow Finance and Brainbase before coming to the government for work?
Yes.
Okay. Any other jobs?
I don't believe so.
Okay. How much were you making at Flow Finance?
My salary was probably $250,000 a year
Okay.
or so.
And was that your last job before joining government?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you took a pay cut of almost half to join government, is that right?
Yeah, I didn't actually want to be paid by DOGE, but it was a requirement to be employed by GSA. You had to take a salary if you weren't a special government employee.
Okay. Why would you be okay with working for DOGE for free?
Because I've already made enough money in my career where an incremental $120,000 doesn't make a difference for me.
Okay.
And if our whole mission is to cut costs, it felt a little bit strange to be taking a salary from the government.
Okay. So would you say that you were willing to take that salary cut because of some sort of mission alignment based on federal deficit reduction?
Yes.
Okay. Any other reason that you'd take such an extraordinary pay cut?
It's not that extraordinary to me, frankly.
Sure.
So
I mean, okay, I guess I would say, I would imagine that taking half cut is a lot for a lot of people, but for you, it's okay that you don't think that that's a lot, but in sense of like why you would do that, why you'd go down to zero or why you'd cut by half, like what exactly was your thinking in accepting that?
Rejection.
I sold my first company when I was 24. I was fortunate to make a lot of money. After that happened, I didn't need to make an extra $120,000 to take a job helping reduce the federal deficit. I didn't think it was necessary.
Okay.
In a startup, you make all of your money in equity. The salary is an afterthought.
So what's your understanding of who Steve Davis was employed by during your time with the government?
I don't know which agency he was employed by. I believe it was the EOP, Executive Office of the President, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. How did you communicate with Mr. Davis?
In person and occasionally over Signal.
Okay. Did you ever email him?
I probably sent him less than 10 emails in total in my time in government. Most of our conversations were in person at GSA, where we both primarily worked or over Signal.
Okay. And that's the Signal account that you have on your personal phone?
Yes.
Okay. When was the last time that you communicated with Mr. Davis?
A week ago, maybe.
Okay. Is his Signal account attached to his phone number?
I don't know.
Okay. Can you check?
It's not.
It's just his name? I'm asking.
Yes.
You have to answer with a yes or no question. Okay. And there's no phone number attached to that account at all?
No.
Okay. When you talked to Mr. Davis, did you talk about this case?
No.
Did you talk about your work with the government?
No.
Okay. It was just a friendly conversation between you two?
He's an investor in my new company, so we talked about business.
Okay. And you were not an employee of U.S. DOGE service while you were with the government, right?
Correct.
Okay. So earlier you testified that Adam and Michael McDonald told you that they believed that Biden administration grants, the Biden administration administered grants that violated EOs the most.
Objection, Mr. testimony.
Do you remember testifying about that conversation?
Can you repeat? You
I don't have
stuttered a little bit.
The reason that I say this is because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but you testified generally about how, in a conversation with Mr. McDonald and Mr. Wolfson, they expressed that they believed that the Biden administration had administered grants that violated the EOs.
Objection.
Is that right?
That was their belief, yes.
Okay. And which EOs were they referring to?
I'll find them for you.
Okay.
Do you have Mike's testimony somewhere? The declaration, it's here. Executive Order 14151, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. Executive Order 14173, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. And then the remainder in this paragraph. Paragraph 6 of his declaration.
Right. Did they tell you why they believed that the Biden administration had the most violative grants under the EO?
Did they say why?
No.
They did not say why. They just said as a matter of fact that they had actively promoted DEI policies over the last 4 years.
They what?
Actively promoted and issued grants related to DEI over the last 4 years.
Okay. Did they ever mention anything about grants issued under the first Trump administration?
They didn't explicitly, but Justin and I went through the grants that were still outstanding under the first Trump administration for review for waste and DEI as well.
Okay. What did you end up doing with those grants?
Most of them were already terminated because grant terms are typically 2 to 4 year increments. So there was no balance remaining on the vast majority of them. But to the extent that there were any outstanding, we reviewed which of them could be cut for wasteful spending. I don't have the list in front of me.
Okay, great. So earlier, again, you testified about a specific grant that was displayed by my colleague that was about stories about black people and gay people, and you referred to them as preferencing black and gay people. Do you remember that
Objection.
testimony?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you mean by preferencing as used there?
Preferencing on the matter of race or sexual orientation.
Okay. And preference means what exactly?
Preferencing means choosing one race over another based on race or sexual orientation.
Okay. So a grant, in this context, a grant about black people or gay people would be preferencing black people and gay people?
Objection.
That was the initial lens under which we reviewed that grant, yeah.
Okay. And so would like any story about a black or gay person be preferencing black people and gay people?
No,
Okay. So why in this case was it?
because there's a monetary value in a grant assigned from the federal government to a specific race or person from a sexual orientation.
Okay.
A general story about a black person or a gay person doesn't have monetarily value assigned to it.
Okay. So your idea of your work was isolating and identifying grants that preferenced black people or gay people or other minorities?
It wasn't just minorities. If there was a grant that just went to white people, we would have had the same view. You shouldn't have preferencing.
Okay. And what differentiated a grant that preferenced black people versus a grant that didn't preference black people?
I mean, you can review them on a grant by grant basis,
Okay.
which we did.
Okay.
If you have a specific grant in mind, I'm happy to go through it with you.
We don't have to know. I mean, we've seen them already. Did you also cancel grants that preferenced women, for instance?
Explicitly women? I don't believe so. No.
Were there any other categories of preferential treatment that would render a grant subject to termination, to your view?
Broadly, they would have been in the under the DEI bucket. The wasteful spending bucket is separate. In the DEI bucket, it would have been grants that gave preference to a specific race, any race, gender, or sexual orientation.
Okay.
Any of those buckets.
Sure. And then earlier you testified that grants involving DEI viewpoints were wasteful. Do you remember testifying to that?
I don't actually.
Okay. Do you believe that?
I do believe DEI grants are wasteful,
Okay.
but we can still evaluate grants through two separate lenses. Something can be wasteful and not related to DEI.
Okay. And what exactly is wasteful about a DEI viewpoint?
My personal opinion?
Objection.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that we have and the culture of DOGE was to reduce the federal deficit, and my personal view is that grants related to DEI are wasteful and unnecessary and are not chosen on the matter of merit and skill. And so they are wasteful in the context of a $2 trillion annual deficit, and they should be cut.
Okay. You testified that two categories of grants were marked for saving, ones that related to the founding of the country and others that were related to the Garden of Heroes. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. What does founding of the country mean in that context?
They were grants related to the founding fathers of the U.S., George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, etc. I think your colleague showed the grants that ended up being kept, basically related to other historical figures like Albert Einstein, etc.
As being part of the founding of the country?
I'm acknowledging Albert Einstein was not part of the founding of the country.
Okay. And so the founding fathers, and was there kind of like a period, certain years that you looked at as being the founding of the country?
No, we looked for grants that were politically neutral,
Okay.
that had to deal with the founding of the country,
Right.
and that both parties could look and say that these are not political grants and are worth continuing. Again, it was a judgment call that we initially made and then Mike and Adam ultimately signed off on.
Okay. A judgment call made by you and Justin.
And Mike and Adam.
Okay. You said we initially made. Who are you referring to when you said we?
Myself and Justin
Okay.
went through line by line of the grants.
Right. Okay. So, did you have a supervisor when you were working for the NEH? Working with the NEH?
No.
Okay. You were asked that earlier. You said no, and then you kind of corrected and said, kind of in a way. Steve Davis. Remember that?
Objection.
Steve Davis was my manager at DOGE, but he wasn't checking in for frequent updates on a grant by grant level for
Okay.
NEH.
So if you had a question about, let's say, whether a grant was violative of, or had DEI in it, for instance, or was a borderline call, how would you get clarity on how to deal with that?
Justin and I made a personal judgment call and then reviewed that judgment call with Mike and with Adam.
Okay. Do you have any history in, like, let's say, scholarly peer review?
No.
Okay. So, but this judgment call was made by you and your personal judgment combined with Justin's personal judgment to cancel grants based on DEI.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's inappropriate in any way that someone in their 20s with no experience with grants or federal government was making personal judgment calls about what grants to cancel?
Objection.
No, I don't think it's inappropriate.
Okay. Why not?
Objection.
I think a person can have enough judgment from reading books and being well informed outside of traditional experience to make judgment calls about obvious things like a grant that literally lists DEI in its description to know whether it violates an executive order.
Okay.
I don't think you need to have a scholarly peer review background to do that.
Okay. So presumably you read some of these books that would have informed you on how to cancel a grant based on DEI?
Objection.
I did not read a book on how to discern whether a grant includes DEI or not. I read the actual description of the actual grant.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm saying books because you said books. What books would you have read that would have informed your opinion on what grants to cancel based on DEI or not DEI?
There were no books.
Okay. So there are no books. Anything else that would have informed you on how to do this?
No.
Just kind of your whims, I guess? Is that what you're saying?
Objection.
They're not my whims. It's my judgment of how to interpret a grant that includes DEI characteristics or our wasteful spend.
Right. And there was no one that you were consulting to make that call?
No.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Justin about edge cases?
If
Edge cases? Cases on the edge? DEI?
yeah, if there was an edge, again, the lens by which we were making decisions. I know you're very focused on DEI. The only lens was not DEI. It was also wasteful spending. The priorities for NEH's grants were related to the founding of the country, or America 250 initiative this year, or the Garden of Heroes. If the grants didn't fall in those three buckets and met a DEI criteria, or in our view were wasteful spending, we would flag those grants for review for Mike and Adam to agree with. If there was an edge case, we leaned on the side of cutting it because DOGE's mission was to reduce federal spending. We erred on the side of cut versus keep, generally.
Okay. Did you go through any type of HR onboarding when you joined GSA?
Yes.
Can you walk me through what that was?
I don't remember the specific courses we took. It was like a multi-hour video series where you went through traditional corporate HR policies.
Okay. Was it 1 day of onboarding, 2 days, a week?
It was a day or two of onboarding, including going through training, getting our PIV card, etc.
Okay. Did you go through that onboarding with anyone else or by yourself?
Someone from GSA-HR, but there were no other teammates with me during that time.
Okay. Did you fill out any paperwork as part of that process?
Did I fill out any paperwork after completing the HR training?
Or as part of the HR training?
I didn't fill out any paperwork regarding the HR training, no.
Did you have a background check run on you?
I did.
Okay. Did you go through any training on how to maintain government records?
I believe so, yes. Yes, I don't recall exactly what was in there, but yes.
Okay. Did it touch at all on using auto-delete services?
I honestly don't recall.
Did the onboarding, did you receive as part of the onboarding process a government laptop and phone?
Yes.
Okay. And have you since returned those after leaving government?
Yes.
Okay. So earlier we talked about some of your communications with Mr. Davis, including, in the context of you emailing yourself, I think you were saying, and then using that email on Signal to send to Mr. Davis. Do you remember talking about that with Mr. Robinson earlier?
I do.
Okay. Walk me through that process exactly.
There was a weekly scorecard, as it was called, where we reported on savings across each agency. It was black text in an Excel spreadsheet file. That was downloaded. Steve preferred that to be sent over Signal. Signal is not on a government device, so we downloaded it and sent it to Steve on Signal. That
Okay.
was the extent of.
So Mr. Davis was not on a government device?
I don't know if he was on a government device or not. I know he preferred to receive the scorecard on Signal.
Okay. Have you ever, do you know whether Mr. Davis had a government email?
I believe he had an EOP email address that he did not use.
Okay. And you never communicated with him on that email address?
Objection.
I'm sure I sent him an email or two, but it was incredibly infrequent.
So I understand sending Mr. Davis something off of email based on his request, but why did you email something to yourself first before sending it to Mr. Davis?
There was no other way to get the scorecard that we generated to Steve on Signal.
Okay. You couldn't go directly from your government email to Signal?
Correct.
Why not?
I don't think GSA allowed the downloading of Signal, among many other apps.
Okay. So GSA didn't allow the downloading of Signal? Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Okay. But you then sidestep that by sending documents to your personal phone so that you could then use Signal?
Objection.
For the weekly scorecard, that was the process, yes.
And that didn't set any alarms about whether or not you should be using Signal to do government work? The fact that GSA didn't let you use Signal on your phone?
GSA didn't let you use a myriad of softwares that would have been common in a standard business. And so I don't know if Signal is representative of, I don't think Signal is a unique case, frankly. There were dozens of apps that weren't allowed on a government device.
Do you think that there's a reason that the government disallows using certain services on their devices?
I'm not sure.
Objection.
Okay. You don't think it was because maybe they were concerned about data leaks or sharing information with people that shouldn't be receiving that information?
Objection.
I really don't know.
Okay. You have no idea why they would not allow Signal on government phones?
Objection.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know many government officials use Signal, so I'm not totally sure.
Okay. Do you think maybe it was for the maintenance of records that they don't allow Signal and auto delete app on government phones?
Objection.
Yeah, again, I don't know.
You really don't know?
Objection.
I really don't know.
Okay. Was Mr. Davis the only person that you communicated with in this way?
Yes.
Do you know if Mr. Davis had a government phone?
I don't know. Presumably, yes, but I don't know.
Okay, let's go off the record for 5 minutes and then let's do 10 minutes, come back.
The time is 3:44, and we're now going off the record.
Thanks.